If you know me, you know exactly what's in this cup. Hello everybody. Today I thought I would share my birth story with Esther, just because I wanted it documented for me to look back on, because it's been almost 2 years since I gave birth to her. No, actually, she's more than 2. It's been over 2 years since I gave birth to her, and you know, you start forgetting the things that happened. It was a very interesting experience, let me tell you. How I didn't end up with like severe trauma from that birth. I still don't know how. Some backstory. So we found out we were pregnant in December of 2018. No. See, I can't remember any of it. Specific details are all jumbled in my head. We found out we were pregnant in January 2019 because I got pregnant in December 2018. I had a relatively normal pregnancy, so I wanted to have a water birth at a birth center, and to do that here in Canada, you need to have a midwife. So I found a midwife. I loved my midwife. So I had appointments with them, and you know, they do the gestational diabetes test. It became very evident that I had gestational diabetes. The test came back pretty high. I mean, I didn't have to change much. I just had to adjust my diet. I was just diet based, so my diabetes was controlled with diet. I could stay with my midwives because I was in high risk. So that was really nice, but that meant that I couldn't have a water birth at a birth center. I had to have a hospital birth, which was fine. Fast forward, I have a relatively normal pregnancy with all the normal aches and pains. And then at 32 weeks, I think I had an appointment that week, and everything looked good. She sounded great. Esther was doing wonderful in my belly. I was 32 weeks and 4 days. I had such a weird feeling. I was like, I need to pack my hospital bag. And then I was like, wait, but I'm a first time mom. I can't give birth right now. Like, why would I just have hospital bag there for 8 weeks? So I just ignored that thought, and I was like, it's fine. My forehead looks huge. So I ignored that thought, and I was like, it's fine. And so later that day, I remember my last craving was a bagel sandwich. It was a bagel sandwich, and I remember eating that and being like, oh, that was not great. At that time, I was working at a bakery, and I was going there like all the time. Like, I didn't really have days off. I was working basically full time at a bakery, which is very like hard on your body. It was a Thursday when I had my last craving. I had the bagel, I went to bed, and that night I just had this weird feeling, and then around like 10 p.m. she stopped moving completely. I was like, that's weird, because she used to move like crazy in the night. Like, I couldn't sleep that much because she would just be punching me the whole time. So for her not to move at all, I was like a little worried. I just thought she would be fine. And so the next morning comes, and I have work at 7 a.m. So my husband drops me off at work. I haven't felt her kick all night or the whole morning while he's driving me home to the work. And so it's like very traumatic. I didn't realize how traumatic it is until I stopped talking about it. And so he drops me off at work, and he's like, it's 7:45, and I feel a little punch as I get out, like she just goes as I get out of the car. And as soon as I feel that, like, I get reassurance that she's okay and that she's alive. As soon as that happens, I get my first contraction. My first time mom. I'd never had Braxton Hicks. I don't know what this is, so I thought I had stomach pains, you know, when you have like really bad poop pains. I was like, oh, it's fine. Going to work, I start getting everything ready. I start getting the bread out of the oven. I get another one, and then I get another one, and another one, and then I have to like sway for them to like be comfortable for me to keep working. Let me tell you, the ability to look at a customer in the eye while they ask you for like something completely random while you're in the middle of labor, like, man, let me just tell you, I had some willpower. And I was just like, he just kept going on and on about this weird bread, and I was like, okay. Well, I'm like literally dying because I don't know what this is. I'm like super worried, but it just hurts, you know. At this time, it's not even like my first contraction was 7:45. At this time, when I was talking to this man, I was talking about bread and dying inside. It was around 8:30, and my contractions were like every 3 minutes. My coworker comes over and she's like, girl, you need to call your midwife. Like, you need to go to the hospital because you can't even stand. I call my midwife. My manager goes down with me to the locker room where we keep our stuff. She goes down there. I call my midwife and she's like, I love my manager. She was amazing. She was just sitting there with me, like rubbing my back. So I call my midwife. I'm like, hey, contractions really bad. And she's just like, oh, it's fine. Have you had much water to drink? Sometimes when you're dehydrated, you get contractions. Like, we didn't think of anything because I was 32 weeks and 5 days. So I was like really early. I was like, yeah, I'll drink some water. And I was like, by the way, they're 2 minutes apart. And she's like, oh, you should have said that before. So she's like, oh, they're 2 minutes apart. I need you to get to the hospital right now. I hang up on my midwife. I call my husband and I'm like, hey. He's like, do you need to go to the hospital? I'm like, yeah, I need to go to the hospital. I didn't even have to say much. It's like, he knew when he went to work. He was like, I'm gonna have a baby today. I need to get Eric here so he can like tell his side of the story. I call my husband and I tell him, okay, I need to go to the hospital. So he comes, picks me up. I'm like hanging on to the side of it. I'm like, I was full on labor. Never experienced this before. I never had Braxton Hicks. I didn't know what was going on. I was super scared because she hadn't moved since that little punch that she did in the morning. Now this time is 9. Like, it hasn't even been 3 hours. 9 in the morning. Because technically my contractions started at 8, like 7:45, 8. That's been like an hour and a half max, and they're getting stronger and stronger and stronger. To the hospital, they like put me in the triage room, they hooked me up. My baby was okay, but not doing great. Her heart rate kept going up, but it wasn't concerning yet. They just kept monitoring her, and my midwife was in there with me, but she thought it was just like false labor, so she didn't think to check me. No beef with my midwife. Like, I completely understand. I love her to death. Like, she didn't do anything wrong. And the OB on call comes in and she's like, hey, do you mind if I check you? And I was like, yeah, do whatever you want. When she goes in and she checks me and she's like, oh, you're at a 5. And I just remember my midwife saying, holy, like, she swore, and then she didn't even realize that she swore. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And it was, oh, that was funny. I remember that part really well. I've been in labor for 2 hours because she checked me at like 10 and I was already at a 5. Like, oh, hey, by the way, we don't know how fast you got to a 5, so we don't know how fast you're gonna get to a 10. So let me just move you to a labor room. And so they move you to a labor room around 10:30. I'm just laying there, making literally no sound. Whole labor, during every contraction, I made literally 0 peeps. Like, I made no sounds. There's a picture of me that Eric took, and I'm just like on the bed like this. I look like I'm in pain, and I was in like a lot of pain. I made literally no sound, which is amazing because the amount of sound I made with my second baby is like I was moaning the whole time with my second daughter. But anyways, that's another story. Equally dramatic. So I'm lying there in labor room, just quietly in pain. The OB comes in again and she's like, hey, your baby looks in distress. Her heart rate keeps going up and up and up. At this time it's like 11:30. Esther is in real distress because her heart rate is not coming down. Her heart was in the 200s. She was just not doing great. So she's like, oh, let me check you again. And I was like at a 7. And she's like, all right, it's been like 20 minutes. You've been here for 20 minutes and you're like a 7. Just kept checking on Esther, and then she went to check on another patient. I think, yeah, she went to check on another patient, and then she came back. She's like, your baby's not doing okay. You're at 10 right now. And the time she went and came back, I had fully dilated. We need to push. You need to get this baby out in the next 10 minutes or you need an emergency C-section. So they just put my legs up. By the way, no medication. They tried to give me gas and air, and it just annoyed the crap out of me. So just laying there, medication, just chilling with my legs open. It was a premature baby, 8 weeks early. My whole team was in there, but I don't remember any of this. Like, I just know this because my husband remembers. But all the people I remember being there is the OB, my midwife, the nurse that was on my left side, and my husband. But there was like about 20 people in the room, and I don't even remember seeing them. So at this point, they're like, okay, you gotta push like nothing you've ever done before. And so I just pushed so hard. In 2 pushes I got her out. Yeah, in 2 pushes I got her out. I pushed once and they're like, okay, in the next contraction I pushed really hard, and I was like, okay, but then I, like, in my mind, I didn't want anything to happen to her, And I didn't care about the C-section. I wasn't scared about it, but I just wanted her out so she would be okay. So I didn't even wait for the next contractions. Once they were like, oh, just push when the next contraction comes. I did not wait. I just went for it. I just pushed. And man, did I tell you, the ring of fire burns. When you have like nothing, numbness, no nothing, like you're completely raw and like you just feel all the pain. I just pushed like nothing before, and I pushed once and they're like, okay, go push with your next contraction. I didn't wait for it. I pushed again and she was out. So I was in labor for 4 hours and she was out in 10 minutes. I started pushing at like 11:59 and she came out at 12:09 p.m. She was so small, like she was 4 pounds because she was 8 weeks premature. When she came out, I remember them flopping her onto my hip. It was just this little blue thing because she couldn't breathe. It was this little blue baby. As soon as I pushed her out, I just like passed out. Like I don't remember anything. I remember them putting her onto my leg and seeing her there, and then she was blue, so they had to take her. They took her away and the NICU team was there, and so my husband went with her. She was intubated and all that stuff, and then they took her to the NICU. I just remember passing out and like looking up and looking for her, and I was like, oh, is she okay? And they were like, yeah. And then I passed out again, and then I just remember waking up again and I was like, oh, I'm so hungry, to the nurse, and she just laughed. It was just me and the OB sewing me up because I had a 2nd-degree tear after I delivered my placenta, and then they showed me my placenta. They're like, hey, you want to see your placenta? And I was like, yeah, for sure. So they showed me my placenta, and it wasn't tiny, but it wasn't that big. Like it was this big, which is not huge because Oakley's, my second daughter, was like ginormous. So I'm just laying there alone with the nurse and the OB and my midwife. My midwife was there still. She was with me the whole time. She did not leave my side. She was holding my hand. She was talking to me. She was telling me everything that was happening, which is amazing. Like I love my midwife. So they sew me up. I'm just chilling, waiting for Eric. Eric comes back. He's like, oh yeah, she's in the NICU. We can go see her later. So they roll me back into my room, postpartum room, and I'm just there, babyless. I think as soon as she was born, I went completely numb. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel excited. I wasn't angry. Like I had no feelings. I just pushed out a baby, had full-on contractions, had no medication whatsoever to help me with it. And then she was born and then she was gone. You know, like they just took her. I didn't even get to like hold her or anything. And I didn't feel anything. Like I wasn't sad about it. I wasn't angry. I wasn't joyful that I had a baby. I was just numb. And then after a couple hours, they're like, oh, hey, oh no, they came in right away with a pump so I could pump out colostrum. And so I pumped a little bit of milk. So after I went pee, I was able to go see her in the NICU. So I walked to the NICU. Oh, there she is, like that. That's my baby. She's alive. And she had tubes on her. She had an IV. She was intubated. She was just this little tiny thing that I couldn't hold. So I wasn't really attached to her. And I couldn't hold her for a while. Like she was in the NICU there for like a couple hours. And the hospital that I gave birth didn't have an advanced enough NICU that they could keep her there. So they had to transfer her to a different hospital. Paramedics came and put her in this little transfer incubator and just transfer her to Foothills, which was a level 3 NICU. They have like really sick babies. So my baby went to a different hospital. I stayed in the same hospital, recovering, watching Stranger Things with my husband, and I wasn't upset. Like I was just numb. And now that I'm like talking about it 2 years after, it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad. I was just there, like I just went through this traumatic experience of giving birth unexpectedly, like 2 months before I'm supposed to give birth. I hadn't prepared for it. My daughter is in a different hospital. Like, oh, I'm just here. I mean, I don't know how I got through that, but I did. And the next day I was discharged. They don't keep you in there that long when you give birth. So the next day I was discharged, and I think we went straight to the hospital. I think we went straight to the hospital where Esther was. And we went to see her, and then we went home without a baby. And she was still in NICU. She had light therapy because she had jaundice, and she was still, she wasn't intubated. She had a CPAP at that point. So she wasn't intubated anymore, but she still needed help with her lungs. Oh, help with her lungs. That reminds me of it. I always forget about this part. For my personal experience, is the worst part about my birth stories, and is the steroid shot that they give you right before you you give birth, if you're having a premature baby, they give you this ginormous shot of steroids and help them mature their lungs as fast as possible, so it goes straight into your butt. Not in your butt, in your butt cheek. It's like, oh, I think that's the worst liquid injection ever. Like, the liquid going in hurts so much more than labor for me. I was like, oh, that is the worst thing I've ever experienced. I always forget about it. I always forget to mention it. But I don't even think it did anything to Esther because she was born so fast. So we go home, then we go back to the hospital another day. The next day, Esther was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and I didn't get to hold her until she was 4 days old. When she was 4 days old, that was the first time I held my baby, my firstborn, and the first time I've ever held my own child. The next day, I had to breastfeed for the first time, and she was a champ. She breastfed for 18 months. She loved breastfeeding, and it was amazing. We had an amazing experience. It's just crazy to see the difference, like how it started and then how it ends. She was there for 3 weeks. I didn't hold her until she was 4 days old. I breastfed at 5 days old, and I would go there every day, 9 in the morning, and leave at 9 p.m. So I would stay there the whole day. I'll do a 12-hour shift with the nurses. I'd cuddle her all day, do skin to skin, I'll feed her. So while I was there, she would be breastfed, and when I would leave through the night, they would feed her. She was bottle fed with my breast milk. Because I would pump every 3 hours at home just to mimic having a newborn. She did really good. Like, for someone that was born at 32 weeks, she didn't stay in the hospital very long. She was just there for 3 weeks, and she had to come home at 36 weeks. She turned 36 weeks, and she was she was barely 5 pounds, and she barely fit in her car seat. Oh. Let's not break this. Anyway, she barely fit in her car seat. I think she looked like a Teletubby. Like, she looked cute back to me back then, but if I look at the pictures now, she was not a cute baby. Adorable toddler though. Adorable toddler. I probably missed a bunch of stuff. Anyways, thank you for listening to me rambling. If you made it all the way, that's my birth story. If you're about to give birth, you'll be fine. So it's a great experience. I would do it all over again. I have done it again. My second pregnancy was different, but I think the same amount of difficulty. You can do it. It is a great experience. It'll fill you with love and respect for yourself. I've never felt so much confidence in my life than the day I gave birth. I felt like I could do anything, and at the same time you're so like broken, like your body is so broken that you can't really do anything besides lay in a bed and breastfeed, which is ironic really. But yeah, thank you for listening. I hope this helped you if you're a NICU mom. If you're a NICU mom, I feel your pain. It is hard. It is a hard experience. It's hard to see them in pain. It's hard to see them having to have tests done, being poked, being raped, having monitors attached to them, having tubes in them. It's very hard to see them like that. But just know that that's the best place that they could be in. They have the best help. If they weren't there, they probably wouldn't be alive. And it's better for them to be in there safe than for them to be home. And also, it goes by faster than you'd think. Esther was in a NICU for 3 weeks. It went by really fast, and now she's more than 2 years old. She's happy, she's healthy, and she's beautiful. She's the most resilient little thing you've ever seen. She's feisty, she's hilarious, she's the funniest person I know. And I think a lot of that comes from being a NICU baby. I think a lot of her resilience and strength she needed to survive that. And I'm so grateful that she's mine. I hope that if anything, this video brought you a smile because it brought me tears. And I hope that you have a great day. Thank you for watching. This is most definitely Coke.